From the people who bought you COVID vaccines, cancer vaccines. Oh no, we're all gonna die. Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. Remember, I do Stay Free with Russell Brand Monday to Thursday on Rumble. And if you get an annual subscription to Rumble Premium, it really helps me. Use my code at the bottom of the screen right now to support me. Because throughout the pandemic period, we were telling you, weren't we, on this channel? I think the receipts are there. They're all up on YouTube, Rumble and elsewhere, that something extraordinary was going on. We were being lied to on an unprecedented scale. That the virus must have originated in a leak. That there were strange financial connections between Anthony Fauci and Peter Daszak. That the media were complicit in a campaign that seemed designed to keep the public spellbound, distracted, controlled and castrated. Now, we have proof and evidence that COVID came from a laboratory. Of course it bloody well did. And the legacy media themselves admit it. But where are they on Albert Bourla's new claim that we can fight a literal war against cancer in our bodies using new bespoke cancer vaccines? And if we trusted them then, and they lied to us, why should we trust them now? But remember, when Anthony Fauci used to claim things like this.
A fairly large group of very well-respected evolutionary virologists have examined epidemiological, virological, geospatial data from Wuhan and have come to the conclusion, not definitively by any means, but feeling that it is much more likely that it is a natural occurrence from an animal to a human.
There you go, that's what media used to look like. Anthony Fauci lying to Jim Acosta. He said it plainly and confidently. This is some reporting from Ashley Rinsberg that helps us understand how that story unfolded. And I'd like to offer you this. If that's what the medical establishment and legacy media were telling us then about COVID, how can we trust what Albert Bourla is telling us now about cancer vaccines? Let me know in the comments in the chat. The media didn't just get COVID-19's origin wrong. They deliberately shut down legitimate inquiries, smeared anyone who questioned the official story, and ran cover for the institutions most responsible for the pandemic. Now, after years of gaslighting the public, the CIA has quietly admitted that the virus most likely came from a lab. This isn't just a media failure, it's the most successful propaganda campaign in modern history. For years, if you even suggested COVID-19 might have leaked from a lab, you were labelled a conspiracy theorist. We remember that, don't we? We remember that label, those campaigns, those smearings, those attacks, those peculiarly funded odd online organisations and operations. We remember Moderna and Pfizer talking about people that were spreading misinformation in leaked reports. We learned a great deal during that time. We saw talk show hosts dressing up. We saw people telling the truth censored. Since then, we've seen Mark Zuckerberg do an about turn. Since then, we've potentially seen the HHS radically revolutionised by its main detractors and the people that were outside of the court reified and elevated to positions of power. So much has changed, but have we seen the investigation that's warranted, and have we seen the culpable taken to task? Worse, you were called racist, a career-ending accusation in today's world. This wasn't an accident, it was a coordinated effort designed to silence debate and protect powerful interests. The media, the US government, and the Chinese Communist Party all played a role. Sounds like a pretty vast conspiracy theory to me, the idea that big pharma, government, and the media would all work together to control a global narrative, potentially control a global disease, use it to inaugur citizen management and mass control. Pretty extraordinary. It started in early 2020. As the virus spread, the Chinese government immediately pushed the idea that it came from a Wuhan seafood market. There was no evidence for this. In fact, the first major study on the outbreak published in The Lancet showed that a third of early cases had no connection to the market. At first, the New York Times and Science magazine reported this honestly. Then everything changed. Now, the fact that there was a pivotal moment suggests that it was deliberate, because early reporting appeared to be somewhat organic. Unlike the virus, which was made in a lab, plainly, which they could have told us at the time. In late January, Senator Tom Cotton cited the Lancet study in a Senate hearing, raising an obvious question. Could COVID-19 have come from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, China's only biosafety level 4 lab, which was studying bat coronaviruses? Cotton didn't claim the virus was a bioweapon. He didn't even say the lab leak was certain. He simply asked a question. And here is Tom Cotton doing exactly that.
Still don't know where it originated. Could have been another seafood market. Could have been a farm. Could have been a food processing company. I would note that Wuhan also has China's only biosafety level 4 super laboratory that works with the world's most deadly pathogens to include, yes, coronavirus.
In a sense, he's making the point that Jon Stewart would eventually successfully make, that it was like an explosion of chocolatey goodness in Hershey, Pennsylvania. On February 9th, CBS News host Margaret Brennan interviewed China's ambassador to the US. Instead of pressing for answers, Brennan served up the key talking point. Senator Tom Cotton suggested the virus may have come from China's biological warfare program. That's an extraordinary charge. How do you respond? Cotton had never said that, but the ambassador seized the moment. He called the lab leak discussion dangerous and warned that it could lead to rumours, xenophobia and racial discrimination. Just 2 days later, China's state-run China Daily published an editorial condemning the rumours that COVID-19 came from a lab. And just like the ambassador, they played the racism card, warning that the accusation could fuel racial discrimination. Here are some of those headlines from the time. Both ran headlines designed to mock and to legitimize him. Where did they get this framing? From Beijing. The Washington Post and New York Times didn't expose Chinese disinformation. They amplified it. Now, many of us are very familiar with these stories and this kind of reasoning. We've known for a long, long while. I feel like I was 12 years old when I knew that thing came out of a lab. But what we need to pay attention to is what are the people that told us that then telling us that now? Well, what's Albert Bourla been saying lately? One thing he's pretty convinced of is that we should all be taking cancer vaccines. Now, let me know in the comments and chat. Do you trust Albert Bourla, the man who gave you moonshot, the man who profited extraordinarily from the pandemic after saying that he wouldn't when it comes to cancer? Let me know in the comments and chat.
First, I need to tell you that I'm super excited about the prospects of life sciences, exactly because of that. It's not only advancements in biotechnology, but also advancements in digital technology. That the two are colliding and they are going to create tremendous synergistic effects. I'm going to use an example of a disease that worries all, the emperor of all maladies, cancer.
My favourite disease, in fact, because it's the disease which I can most imagine making profit from. Cancer, king of disease. King penguin, king of penguins. If only we could have penguin cancer marching through your veins and then create a vaccine from that. What? It's impossible? A king penguin living in people's veins causing cancer? It's possible, though. It's a moonshot. We might just be able to do it. What a brilliant rant, Albert Bourla. That's how the legacy media would probably respond if Albert Bourla proposed releasing king penguins into our bloodstream to cause, then cure, cancer. What he is claiming is somewhat less ludicrous than that, but it's still pretty preposterous. The merging of potentially dangerous AI technology with potentially dangerous mRNA technology, not confronting the fact that we've just gotten over a pandemic where scientific research likely created a problem that it subsequently tried to claim credit for curing when it didn't really cure it at all, and potentially generated a cure causing, among other things, potentially, well, certainly myocarditis, certainly miscarriage, potentially turbo cancers. We got a vaccine for that. Senolytics are the biggest discovery for promoting healthy aging. The aging process obviously isn't our friend, unless I suppose, there's eternal life. But while we're here, we want to be energetic and productive. That's why I use Qualia Senolytic with science-backed ingredients that have helped me feel, I would say, 15 years younger in a matter of just months. Everyone accumulates senescent cells, known as zombie cells. These senescent cells are old and worn out and not fulfilling a useful function for our health, but they take up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. Qualia Senolytic removes zombie cells and allow healthy cells to thrive. Resist aging at the cellular level. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to QUALIA.com/brand for up to, get this, 50% off, and use the code BRAND at the checkout for an additional 15% off. Try it now. Qualia Senolytic is also available at select GNC locations near you. Take it. Just 2 days a month. There's a link in the description. Who don't want to feel 15 years younger and get rid of them zombie cells?
There is a new biotechnology that we are using, which is called ADC, antibody drug conjugate. I'm going to use, because we have marked here, military terms to describe the war on cancer.
And also because we are at war with humanity and life itself, and we see freedom, life, and the human spirit as the kind of enemies to our Luciferian power.
The problem is that when you use the chemotherapies, that they are most common used drugs right now for cancer, you are not killing only the cancer cells, but you are killing also the healthy cells. So you need to be more precise.
It's probably every time you agree with Albert Bourla, acknowledge it. So that's one of the times I agree with Albert Bourla.
So that's why we developed something like a GPS-guided missile, a medicine that is very precise.
It's like a missile with which I can control entire populations while profiting.
We try, first of all, to identify a target that will identify that this is what we want to kill and shoot. So, for example, a protein that it is more common in the cancer cell than in the healthy cells. One of the example, IB6, it's a protein, IB4, which is a protein that is expressed in 90% of lung cancer cells. So now we know that this is the target. We know that if our missile sees IB4, we'll attack it. In order to identify targets, AI will make that process that usually was taking years, will take months.
Look, actually, I can envisage a scenario where AI technology and mRNA technology could be used to cure cancer. Just don't think I want it in the hands of the people that profited from the pandemic and who likely participated in the pandemic being as severe as it was and used to legitimise authority in the manner. Back to Ashley Rinsberg's reporting. The most powerful move came behind closed doors. On February the 1st, 2020, Anthony Fauci held a secret call with some of the world's top virologists, including Jeremy Farrar, a British science official with ties to MI5. Before that call, these scientists privately admitted that COVID-19 looked engineered and was likely from a lab. Christian Andersen, a top virologist, wrote to Fauci saying the virus seemed inconsistent with evolutionary theory. That's a pretty significant claim from a scientist. This doesn't seem like it evolved naturally in the way that you claim that it does. It seems like it's kind of been created in a lab. What, like the Monster Mash? Or like my King Penguins? No, I suppose more like the Monster Mash. I love that song. It was a graveyard smash. Then, within days, they changed their story. The same scientists who thought that COVID-19 had leaked from a lab suddenly drafted a paper dismissing the idea. That paper, later published in Nature Medicine, became the media's key piece of scientific evidence against lab leak. At the same time, Fauci and Farrar worked with Peter Daszak, the man who personally funneled US taxpayer money into the Wuhan lab, to publish another letter in The Lancet. Here is Peter Daszak, one of those names that we all know now because of independent media reporting during the pandemic that helped us to understand that taxpayer money was being used directly in Wuhan and that Anthony Fauci had peculiar relationships with groups like DARPA. Here is Daszak.
The conspiracy theories, the pointing of the finger at China, and just this sort of politicization that means...
The pointing of the finger at China, the claim that I lack charisma, all of it is sickening to a fella like me.
Countries clamp up, and it's really unfortunate because what we need right now is open communication with scientists across the world. China's done a lot to deal with this virus before us. They know a lot about how to control it. We need access to that information, and talking in political terms about this outbreak closes down that access.
I like China. Look at my pictures on wall. China. See that one? China. See that one? China. I like China. What I resent most of all is the kind of haughty assumption of superiority, the didactic tone. We're talking down to you, you idiots, you racists. You said this about China. You'll prevent international cooperation. There was international cooperation going on. That's what conspiracy actually means.
They know a lot about how to control it. We need access to that information, and talking in political terms about this outbreak closes down that access.
Now, men like Jay Bhattacharya, new purported head of the NIH, pending confirmation, and Marty Makary, same for FDA, were outspoken critics of Peter Daszak and many of his assumptions, and the Barrington Declaration, of which Jay Bhattacharya was a signatory and author, was one of the key and pivotal moments in the pandemic period where opposing yet legitimate scientific voices vocally opposed government policy and the official narrative that we were all supposed to swallow and ingest, along with as many vaccines as possible. Have you had your 19th booster yet? That it was of natural origin and therefore kind of God's fault rather than it came from a lab, and it was corporatized science's fault. There was a letter signed by 27 signatories declaring that questioning COVID-19's origin was conspiracy theorizing and harmful. The scientists presented themselves as neutral experts, like Daszak is there, like a neutral expert rather than someone with a vested interest. The ultimate neutral expert is, of course, let me know in the comments and chat, Fauci. The scientists presented themselves as neutral experts, but in reality had many direct ties to the Wuhan lab. None of these conflicts were disclosed. The media ran with it. CNN, The Guardian, The New York Times, NPR, Slate, The Washington Post, 60 Minutes, Wired, Associated Press, Bloomberg News, CBS News, Science Magazine, The LA Times, NBC News, Vox, Now This, ABC News, The Atlantic, The New Yorker, all cited Daszak as an authoritative source. Not one of them questioned his deep financial and professional ties to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So how does legacy media work? You heard that litany of names. Can you ever trust the legacy media again? No wonder press passes are being given to independent media now rather than legacy media stooges and liars. This at least is a positive early sign out of the Trump administration. Would you agree? Let me know in the comments and chat. Meanwhile, actual experts who supported investigating lab leak were ignored. The New York Times repeatedly cited Stanford microbiologist David Ryman over 20 times, Harvard epidemiologist Mark Lipstick 64 times, and Yale immunobiologist Akiko Iwasaki 67 times on pandemic-related issues. But when it came to COVID's origins, silence. The message was clear. There's only one acceptable answer. That's how the media support and amplify official narratives. Lots of techniques were used to control opposition, smearing opponents. I know a thing or two about that. So does Jay Bhattacharya. So does Joe Rogan. There was a variety of smears. One of the common smears was, "You're racist." Here's Apurva Mandavali calling the lab leak theory itself racist. Someday we will stop talking about the lab leak theory and maybe even admit it's racist, but alas, that day is not here yet. I've totally got a terrible cough. You have not got a cough. That's racist. For years, journalists, researchers, and everyday people who asked basic questions were silenced, censored, and deplatformed. Evidence was destroyed. China erased key data and blocked investigations. The public was manipulated into believing that lab leak wasn't just unlikely, it was immoral to even suggest. Then when the lab leak theory refused to die, the media tried to rewrite history. They blamed Trump derangement syndrome, claiming they dismissed lab leak because Trump politicized it. But this is another lie. The biggest moves in the propaganda campaign, Fauci's secret call, the Lancet letter, the media's first attacks, happened before Trump had said a single word about lab leak. In early 2020, Trump was still praising China's handling of the virus. The cover-up was already in full swing. Now the CIA has quietly reversed this assessment, but the damage is done. The world was misled, the media protected the Chinese government, American public health bureaucrats, and their own credibility at the cost of truth. This wasn't a mistake, it was the greatest propaganda victory in modern history. That's why we have to at least be somewhat circumspect when Trump pulls out of the WHO. That's why we have to be at least somewhat heartened when the Trump press secretary grants passes to independent journalists. And that's why we have to be deeply cynical when Albert Bourla claims that mRNA and AI in his hands could solve the world's king problem, or king of diseases, or emperor of toxicity, whatever he called it, cancer itself. We have to be extremely cautious about who we trust, and on the list of people we can't trust, well, let's repeat that list with some of the people that willingly lied. The Guardian, New York Times, NPR, Slate, Washington Post, 60 Minutes, Wired, Bloomberg, CBS, the list goes on. Many of them are members of the Trusted News Initiatives. All of them work collegiately and cohesively to bring down any dissenting voices, sometimes even smearing them and attacking them with the vilest allegations or claims of racism if they dare to oppose the official narratives that they're financially invested in holding up. That's why we must support independent media, independent thinking, and that's why we must awaken together. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? Remember, we stream every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Rumble. On Thursday, we do our Oracle series with Lara Logan and Neil Oliver, and we've got fantastic projects available for all of you that support us either on Locals, we'll keep putting our content there, or on Rumble Premium, that if you join annually and support me, it directly benefits me. Thank you for that. More important than any of that, though, is if you can, please stay free.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.